2001. And I think the trend we're working on at Spiffy is services are going to go digital. So think about all the services in your life that you consume. A lot of people put restaurants into there, but anything around your house, electrician, HVAC, any of that kind of stuff. And then we decided to focus on the car.
Okay, we're recording. This is another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. My guest today is Scot Wingo. He is the founder of Spiffy and a prior founder as well that hopefully we'll talk about. But Spiffy is his new venture. And thank you, first of all, Scot, for joining me.
Thanks for having me. You talk about two of my favorite things, automate and growing. So I'm excited to dig into those two topics.
Oh, terrific. Yeah. And you've had quite the success on the one venture and now hopefully repeating it in another one. And I should have mentioned also that you are the host of the Jason+Scot show, which is a podcast.
Yeah. We talk about e-commerce topics. So
terrific. Okay. So why don't we start off and just tell us, what is Spiffy?
Yeah, so Spiffy is on-demand car care. So, we believe there's these mega trends going on, and that's really kind of what we're focused on. So I think as an e-commerce guy, my company prior to Spiffy was in the e-commerce enablement space called ChannelAdvisor. We helped brands and retailers sell on marketplaces like eBay and Amazon. And so I've been in the e-commerce world since 2001. And I think the trend we're working on at Spiffy is services are going to go digital. So think about all the services in your life that you consume. A lot of people put restaurants into there, but anything around your house, electrician, HVAC, any of that kind of stuff. And then we decided to focus on the car because when you look out there at different services people get, some of the lower rated ones are around your car. No one ever woke up and was like, oh boy, I'm going to get an oil change today. I'm super excited about that. So that's a trend. And then also from e-commerce, I borrowed this trend where there's all this data now that's very interesting that shows that the consumers have split into a value-oriented consumer and then a convenience-oriented consumer. So that convenience-oriented consumers who we focus on at Spiffy. And then the other fun thing is I drive a Tesla, and cars are changing more. It's kind of like when you first had that first iPhone experience, and you're like, this is such a jump up. Once you drive a car like that, with the bigger connected car, it's got electrical, obviously, etc. Cars are going to change more in the next 10 years than they have in the last 100. So those are some of the big trends we've really kind of voted on with Spiffy, but the user experience is very similar to like an Uber style experience. The difference on the front end, so you use an app and you request a service, but on the back end, we decided, unlike an Uber or a Lyft, your car is typically one of your top 2 or 3 assets. You don't want just some random person dealing with it. So it's our employee. They're trained, they're using our equipment. We have a variety of systems in place to monitor what they're doing and where they're going next and the quality of what they're doing.
So the employees are not freelancers per se. They're people that are part of the Spiffy team. So you have like a core team and.
Yeah, they're W-2, so they're our employees, and they're paid. They're hourly employees, which is kind of what the W-2 implies. Now we made that decision very early on. You're in California, and as you know, I'm sure you're tired of hearing about this, but the rest of the world, California is kind of on a jihad against 1099 economy workers.
Crazy.
So they call that AB5, if I believe, and
I don't know.
It's on the ballot, and so actually, you guys have struck down Uber and Lyft, but then there's something that November 3rd, they'll decide if you will have that way of doing things.
I'm trying to think what that prop is. It's like Prop 22 or something that we all.
That's right. Yeah. AB5 is the law that they created, and then Prop 22 is the escape hatch that Lyft and Uber are trying to get through so they can keep going.
Do we know what we should vote? Like if we're against like outlawing, they want to make everybody an employee, which is bizarre. Like, I don't. I think, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I don't really have a personal point of view.
I'll have to look into it before I fill out a ballot.
I tend to avoid government involvement because it always has unintended consequences. So one of the, everyone defines it as this Uber Lyft thing, but think of all the, every journalist I know is a freelancer,
Right.
and, they're, one of the unintended consequences is if you're Uber and Lyft, you're maybe going to go ahead and hire maybe 10 or 20%. So there's going to be like 70 or 80% of negative consequences. So I tend to like let things lay the way they are, would be my personal point of
Yeah,
view as
no,
an
I get
entrepreneur.
it.
Yeah.
So the big problem it sounds like that you're targeting is around convenience and maintenance of a vehicle, but also, so are they all maintenance type tasks, or is it?
Yeah, so we started with, I'm a big study of Amazon, and a lot of times, as an industry is going digital, you have to kind of like walk the customer there. So Amazon started with books, and now we order TVs and couches on Amazon and don't think twice about it. But we all kind of started at books, if you think about back through
That
that
makes
that
sense.
journey.
Yeah,
So we started with wash and detail because it wasn't this huge leap of faith. Out in California, it's actually pretty common to get a mobile detail.
absolutely.
It's less common in other areas, but we felt like, all right, if we can come in there and kind of Starbucksify that experience, meaning it's consistent, professional, digital through an app and everything, then that would give us the jump board to go into other stuff. So then we introduced oil change second, and then now we're experimenting with tires. Ultimately, I think we want to take care of everything around the car. We just announced EV charging, for example. So if folks don't have a home charger or need a top up somewhere, we can come to them, kind of a thing.
So like for the Tesla and the hybrid type owners.
Yeah, so plug-in hybrids. There's Volts, Leafs. There's actually a fair number. Tesla gets a lot of the press, but there's a fair number of electric vehicles out there, and there's I think there's something like 20 or 30 major models coming. So Audi has an e-tron. There's a Mustang coming out. There's just an electric Hummer announced.
I saw
So
that. That looks
yeah,
interesting. I
yeah,
ordered a
that's
Cybertruck.
yeah, that's still going to compete with the Cybertruck. So
Yeah,
we're going to have a lot more electric vehicles out on the road here soon. So we're thinking about what we can do for those folks.
makes total sense. So who typically is using this service today?
Yeah, so we're 80% fleet. So 80% of our business is B2B. So these are large operators of fleets. It starts the top of that pyramid is the rental car companies. So they're our largest customers. Then we have companies like U-Haul. We work with Carvana. We work with a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers, Turo, those kinds of kind of what I would call new ownership type models. And then yeah, anyone that has, and then we kind of work with people that'll have 5 to 100 vehicles in their fleet, and they're
Oh, that
they're
makes
looking for
sense.
someone to take care of that. And then 20% of what we do is consumers.
I'll have to connect you with a friend and client of mine called You Rent Me, and they're kind of in the recreational vehicle space. So I bet you there's some opportunity there to kind of collaborate a little bit.
Yeah, we get, as you probably know, with COVID, RVs are white hot, and we get a lot of requests to clean those. They're a little tricky, the exterior part, and we can do the preventive maintenance on it, the oil change. The interior starts to be like home cleaning. We're not going
Yeah,
to
I
come
was
in
gonna
there
say it's
and do your dishes and clean your bathrooms. That's a little bit outside of our scope of what
yeah,
we typically do.
that makes sense. They have everything from Sea-Doos to motorcycles to whatever, but I'm sure they'll. Yeah, it might
Yeah,
be an interesting conversation anyway.
yeah.
So now you had mentioned at the top a couple things. One was that you have another company, which is ChannelAdvisor, and that's in the e-commerce space. And it sounds like you scaled that and you made the comment that you're really into automation and growth. So tell us a little bit about what kind of maybe your philosophy is there and what sort of tools have you used or systems to get to the level you've at.
Yeah, so one of the two big influences on me over the last 15 years, and ChannelAdvisor is my third company, and Spiffy is my fourth. So I've been at this a while. So I'm kind of a 4-time entrepreneur.
Oh, there you go.
Um, yeah, one of the big influences on me is a book by the Scott Adams Dilbert guy, where he talks about systems versus goals and how to build systems. I think a lot of us do that, but it was kind of like nice to put a framework on it. So a lot of scaling a business. So just to give you an idea, ChannelAdvisor is at like well north of 100 million as a software as a service company. So a lot of that started with you just kind of you build a system. So there's you need to have a hiring system. So who are we going to hire, and what's the framework, and how do we kind of turn the crank on that and make it repeatable and measurable and that kind of thing. And then a really big one in a software as a service company is the sales team. So how are we going to generate leads? How do we measure the pipeline? How do we close those things? How do we automate as much of that as possible? How do we score leads? And then how do we how do we measure that engine and know when it's time to put gas on it or to coast a little bit or take the foot off the pedal. So a lot of the same things I've taken a lot of those learnings, and it's pretty wild because, you grind away at it every day, and then you wake up after 15 years and you've got 150 salespeople. You're kind of like, whoa,
That's what
I
happens.
guess we did build a system. Yeah. Yeah. And then you look, and the system that you built with 5 people, is largely intact. It's just, now have, what is it, 30 pods of those 5 people doing a lot of the same things. So I have an engineering background. So I like to build these systems and try to make them as scalable, and spend a fair amount of time thinking what is the right thing to measure, and what's the flywheel that's going to make this thing spin.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then what did you, for that company, and maybe you've learned from that and done the same thing, was there a big software component to it, or was it more like process and procedure that allowed you to grow it?
Yeah, so ChannelAdvisor is a pure software company. So the way it works is, let's say you're, I'll pick a large retailer. Let's say you're Macy's, and you want to, everyone always thinks about, okay, well, Macy's.com would be the e-commerce experience, but in reality, what happens is most brands and retailers sell more off of their website than on their website. So they're selling on Amazon, eBay, even publishing their products across to like Google Shopping and paid search. So that's what we do at ChannelAdvisor. So imagine you would log into the software, and number one, we need to slurp in your inventory from that would normally be on your website. So we pull that in, and then you say, all right, I want to take these products and put them on this channel. Then so there's kind of a publishing element, if you will,
Sure.
and then the orders come back. So you have to normalize that. But that's the plumbing. And then on top of the plumbing, there's a lot of optimization. So when you sell on Amazon, it's its whole own world. There's SEO for Amazon. There's
Sure.
paid search for Amazon. There's ads on Amazon. Then there's a lot of thinking around matching your products to the right part of the catalog. And then there's a pricing strategy around the buy box, it's called, on Amazon. So you can, most people don't think about it, but every product on Amazon is its own little stock market for that product. There's many people selling it and thinking through what's their strategy for pricing and margin and these kinds of things. So our software at ChannelAdvisor works that whole spectrum.
Yeah, so that's amazing. Our so my methodology is kind of like build digital products, which is an example of what you've done in 2 of these ventures for sure. You've got ChannelAdvisor as a SaaS type platform, it sounds like.
Yep.
And then you've got, Spiffy, which is an app-based means to getting, car maintenance. Mm-hmm. And then automate marketing, sales, and support. So do you have any like favorite tools for automating marketing, sales, or support that you would recommend, or platforms?
Yeah, it depends on the phase of the company, and as a company scales, you kind of you have to revisit the tool set you're using. So ChannelAdvisor uses a lot of Salesforce as the automation platform, okay. But then there's increasingly this ecosystem around Salesforce that's really robust. So there's a lot of really interesting innovation on top of Salesforce. So for example, you want to make your sales team as efficient as possible. So there's some really interesting machine learning kind of, if you're doing your job right, you should have all these leads coming in. And one of the challenges is you don't want to pay a $200,000 salesperson to, talk to a tire kicker. So there's all this really interesting automation around lead scoring, and then take the best, the machine says these are probably the best leads, match that up to your highest paid person, and then have a junior person, kind of an SDR it's called, or an inside sales type person. You want to sift through and make sure the machine didn't miss anything, but so there's a lot of really interesting things there on the edges at that scale. Where we are at Spiffy is much younger, where we're using HubSpot for a lot of that automation and email marketing and drip campaigns and those kinds of things. It's a really good tool until you get to kind of like, I would say somewhere between 10 and 20 million is when it kind of starts to break down.
That's really good feedback, because it's interesting to see a company. Well, first you got one company that's gone through that growth cycle, and now you're starting it again. And it's interesting to hear how you describe really 2 products that are really the leaders right now, I would say, but segmented differently. So it's great feedback. And I'm quite familiar with both because I help companies like that. But so that's amazing to hear that both have been useful to you in that. I want to be conscious of your time. So a couple of things. One is, what can you tell me about the green guy over your left shoulder?
Left shoulder. So this guy, this is Baby Yoda. I'm a Star Wars fan.
There you go.
He's from The Mandalorian, and we're recording this, and I think we're I care more about Star Wars than the election. It's probably sad to say.
I do too.
Yeah. So I think it's October 30th. So yeah, so 3 or 4 days away. So it's exciting. So I am ready for that. I thought, as a big Star Wars fan, I feel like The Mandalorian has really nailed kind of the ethos of Star Wars. So I actually like it probably better than the last trilogy that came out to some degree. So I'm really excited to see the new season there.
I would agree with you on that. I still believe the Clone Wars is the best of all of them, though.
Yeah, I like some of the prequel trilogy as well. So I'm definitely not against that. You mean the Clone Wars cartoon or
cartoon? Yeah, not
yeah.
Attack of the Clones,
Yeah.
but the Clone Wars cartoon is something I evangelized to people. That
Well, did you know Dave Filoni did that, and he's
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Did you watch Rebels?
Yes, yeah, he did a good job on Rebels.
I've explained to people what you need to do is you need to watch Clone Wars, you watch Rogue One, and then you watch Clone Wars to like the 6th season. You go watch Rebels, and you come back and watch the 7th season.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably too deep into it, but I'm excited to always meet someone that's interested. And I do love The Mandalorian. They've done a great job on that. So I'm really excited for that. All right. So finally, how do people get in touch with you? And is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think is important?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on most of the older generation socials. So I'm not on Snapchat or TikTok, but I'm on Twitter. So just Scot SCOT with 1 T Wingo WINGO, and then on LinkedIn as well. So the trick is just remember to drop a T. My dad thought it would be original, so I have a
Thanks, Dad.
Odd spelling. Yes, it makes me very Googleable, which is a blessing and a curse. I would say one of the fun things that we haven't talked about is at Spiffy, everyone sees the app and that's kind of the front end experience, but to automate everything, we've had to develop a ton of our own proprietary software. So, we can kind of, we have a centralized model where we see we have about 200 technicians out on the road every day.
Oh, wow.
We know where they are, what they're doing, and there's a lot of interesting automation around that. And then every technician has an app, and it's essentially their day is relatively complex. So we spend time thinking about how do we simplify their day, and because they could be going to different fleet customers that have different service level agreements. So at one point they could do almost a consumer level experience, and then at U-Haul you don't do vacuuming or cup holders because they only want a $20 service, and then you go visit a customer like you where you're doing a detail. So they have an app that we call the technician app, and it walks them through their day and everything going on, and makes sure we use a lot of checklists. I'm a big fan of a book, The Checklist Manifesto. So this app is essentially software checklist manifesto is how I think about it, of making sure. And then because they have a phone, in addition to checking a checklist, they can take pictures of things, and so it gives us these digital artifacts that help us understand what's going on out there with the technician. And then another fun thing as a software guy is we've done a lot of technology inside the van. So we know the IoT world, the Internet of Things world, has gotten relatively sophisticated and inexpensive at the same time. So we have sensors on the van that monitor, is the vacuum running, is what's going on with the water levels in there, all these really cool things that, 5 years ago would have been science fiction. And now we can do it a relatively inexpensive way.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, actually. I didn't mean to skip over that, so I'm glad I asked. So when you first built the app, I think this is an area that a lot of people struggle with, and they think they just need a developer, but there's so many other components, and it sounds like you probably had a fairly sophisticated approach to this. So when you approach this as a product, did you build it in-house or out-of-house, and what were the kind of big blocks of that project?
Yeah, in the experimental phase, which in the world of agile startups, they would call the MVP, the minimum viable product. The app was really just a very thin veneer that essentially kind of said, hey Michael, what car do you have? What service do you want? And where are we doing this? And then it would just effectively then send an email. So it was like all front end, no back end. But then so then we started getting 3 or 4 emails a day and using Post-it notes. And then and then very quickly you realize there's going to need to be back into the software, because then you're like, oh, the app we missed this, that, and the other. And, another thing I didn't realize until I got deeper into this app ecosystem is it's really hard to change the app dynamically.
Very difficult.
So yeah, yeah. So you're like, you put it out there,
Yeah.
and then you're like, get feedback, and then it takes 3 to 4 weeks just to get it back out there, right? So that
Absolutely.
cycle is really slow. So the more you can do on the back end, the better. So then V2, after we kind of with MVP, then we started really developing what I would call a more kind of enterprise scale app. And to your point, everyone always sees the thin veneer front end. The back end is usually, it's an iceberg situation where
Right.
the app is what we think of as the app is really the tiny part, and then underneath there's a lot of work that has to happen.
Yeah, it's good to hear that, because I think, as I mentioned, I say build digital products and then automate marketing, sales, support. But I think there's a step before that, which is, one, it helps to have validation, which is what you're talking about with an MVP, where you go out with a very minimal product and figure out what should this have in it without loading it down with the Swiss Army knife. So it's good to hear that approach worked for you guys. And then
I'll give you a real world example. So I own a couple of physical car washes, and at a physical car wash, if you looked at a curve of days of the week, you do 80% of your business on Saturday and Sunday. If you there's a high probability the last time you went to a car wash, it was on a Saturday or Sunday. It's just kind of a consumer behavior. So we put the app out, and we had kind of said, all right, we're going to kind of build for that, right? And we staffed, and we're like, all right, here's our weekend staff. And then we gave people the app, and what we found is once you gave them the choice, they actually wanted their car washed at work. And so then we're like, well, that's on Thursday.
So there you go.
Yeah. So we had to, when we went and did the real version of the app, it does a lot around working with office parks. So we work with the office park providers, and essentially the app now will geolocate and it'll say to you, hey, it looks like you're at, 1 Newport Way, which is one of our partners, and we have specialized pricing for all the different office parks. So that's a feature we would have never guessed until we put that MVP out there. And the faster you can get something in the hands of customers and see what they do, the better off it's impossible to guess how people are, be they B2B or consumer, how they're going to use your software. So the faster you can get it in their hands, it's kind of that Facebook go fast and break stuff. I'm definitely a proponent of that, having learned all these things over the years.
That's really good feedback, which is, I think, probably the opposite of the way most people approach it. And they build and they build and they build, and then they put it out there. And if something doesn't land, then to your point, especially if there's a back end, I think at one point, if you go back 10 years when the app, I think, revolution really started, everybody had an app idea. And it's like people just see the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
But it's great that you have that feedback that let's rapidly prototype something, let's get it out there, figure out what else needs to be in it. And then you went and built the complex backend.
Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of, because we have an app, I get a lot of people that will say, I have an idea for an app. I want to, people to buy and sell things in this way. And I'm like, that's, the app part is actually the easiest part, because
Right.
There's going to be a database for all these things. Where's the payment going to live? Where's the receipt going to come from? That's that back end stuff that's not as exciting, but if you're going to scale something like this, you have to invest in it. Yeah.
And so you built a platform in the back end that kind of essentially becomes the product side of the business, which is the two-sided marketplace, right? It's like consumers using one side, and then you mentioned the the detailers or the other employees that you have using the other, the drivers. Did you take the back end brain of that, and did you connect that to CRM? Did you connect it to finance? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we built our own CRM, which is, I'm not a not invented here type person. If I can use something, I will. And at ChannelAdvisor, we use Salesforce very heavily, which we've talked about. But in this example, we need to be so geo aware that there's no CRM that does that. And to build it on Salesforce, we would have only used 5% of Salesforce, but paid 100%. So we built our own CRM system. But we do export to QuickBooks, and where we do a lot of integration with existing systems is on the automotive side. So we plug into all these databases to get pictures of cars, what's called fitment data. So let's say you have a Range Rover, and 2010 Range Rover. Well, we're going to need a very specific oil filter and oil for that. So we need to be able to look that up and make sure it's on the truck. So we need to interface with an API for that. Then we have, and then all these our fleet customers have a variety of APIs, and many of them want us to integrate with their systems. So, if we're at a rental car company and our technician changes the oil, once our technician says I'm done, we have integrated with their backend, so we can release the hold on that vehicle, and within minutes it can be rented out again.
That's smart. That makes sense.
Yeah, so we've had to do a lot of integration with kind of what I would call automotive systems that I would not have guessed we'd need to do.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, which is, you're dealing with fleets. They probably have some sort of fleet management platform to figure out what car is where and whether it's available or not, or if it's rented. Mm-hmm. And then, so what you're saying is you integrate to your customers in some cases so that you can in real time say, yeah, this is ready to go.
Yeah, and it becomes a differentiator because our competitor is the individual, kind of, I call him Larry, the oil change guy, or Joey, the detail dude. And, they're going to hand, at best, they're going to hand a piece of paper. And, if you're that fleet manager, now you've got to go enter all that into your fleet management system. So if we can skip that step and make it more real time and make your life easier. And then again, we have all these digital assets. So a lot of our fleet managers love that we can take all these pictures of a vehicle and then also store that for them. And then, they use that in a variety of different ways to help with their business.
So it sounds like you have a really good handle at this point on the product, which is the SaaS platform, also making deep links into customers through an API. Are you using AI yet, or machine learning? Is that something that you're projecting in the future, or are there any advantages to that or not?
Yeah, we have some ideas there. So, every technician takes 8 before and after pictures of every vehicle. So, we think we can use machine learning there to kind of say, to have a computer do a pre-scan of that and say, hey, looks like the technician missed the trunk of this vehicle. Or another thing that's part of our DNA as a company is to be as environmental friendly as possible. So when we wash every car, we wash it on this mat that is designed. It's called it's got a lip to it. So it's like a little bathtub for your car. And it catches all the runoff and we suck it up out of there, back up onto the van. So we're 100% environmental friendly. Well, one of the, it's actually you get a warning or two as a technician, but if you don't use that mat, it's bad. So having the AI look for that mat should be relatively easy. It's a giant blue square around the car. So we have some ideas there. And then
with the photo, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cool. The AI could kind of see the mat and then let us, send an alert if it doesn't see one. And then around machine learning, we're experimenting with some stuff around tire treads. It's kind of funny that, we have self-driving cars, but to measure a tire tread, the state of the art is you use this little tiny needle and then you look at like the millimeters on this thing and you're supposed to measure 3 places on the tire to do it right. And it takes forever. And then you have to data enter it in. So we've got some interesting technology we're experimenting with around tire tread measurements. And we think we can use some machine learning there to, in addition to knowing is your tire bald or not, which is the first order thing. The second order thing would be there's these different wear patterns on tires that tell you different things going on with either the vehicle, the inflation levels, or the driver's behaviors. So we may be able to look at that and say, Michael, using, another thing we may have to do is do 2 scans. So then we can kind of tell what's going on with the tire between 2 data points. So we could say, Michael, it's been 6 months and you've driven 5,000 miles, but your tire is worn like 7,000. You need to slow down, or let's, or good news, you're getting more life out of your tires than you expected, or you need to rotate your tires, or looks like there's something really weird going on with the alignment here. So we think we can do some machine learning there to there's these tire experts that can just look at your tire and see this going on. But you and I, not being tire experts, we wouldn't notice it. We think a computer could bridge the gap there. Will probably never be as good as, Larry, who's had 40 years in tires, but certainly for Michael and Scott that are more Star Wars fans than spending time, hanging out with tire treads, it would be useful to us.
And then it sounds like you have some sort of technology, or whether you built or bought around dispatch, and don't let me forget to ask where you guys operate, because that's probably important too.
Yeah. So the middleware of what we described. So we have the technician app and the consumer app, and then like a user experience for fleets. The middleware, we call it Conductor, and inside of there, it's got a CRM. It's got asset tracking, so it knows where all our vehicles are and our people, and it actually has the whole payroll system in there as well.
Oh, wow.
So we know that it's got shift management, and then it's essentially ERP for a digital service business that we've built, and then then our customer service team and our dispatch team, they can see where everyone is, and then the software, it's kind of half art, half science. So the software will say, all right, Michael wants a detail Friday at 3. We think this is where it should go on the schedule, but then we like to have a human kind of just check off on that to make sure that that's going to be the right optimal place to put your appointment.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. And scheduling, people always underestimate how complicated that can be. So it's,
Yeah, I thought when we, again, this is kind of why you do these MVPs. In the early days, I was like, we're gonna have to kind of work on the traveling salesman problem, which is this classic computer science problem the whole point of it is you never solve it. You kind of heuristically try to optimize it, but you'll never solve it per se. I thought, oh, this is gonna be interesting. I'm actually going to have to poke around the traveling salesman problem. But it ends up being more predictive analytics. So, if a fleet calls and says, hey, I've got some oil changes on a Monday, and what we found is they are never correct, right? So they'll say, I think I've got 10, and we'll show up and there'll be 30. Well, if we had assumed there'd be 10, then we'd really jam up the day. So we're doing more predictive analytics around that. So understanding, well, at these fleet locations, here's kind of what we think will be there. And then more predictive analytics around office parks. So if we go to, 1 Newport Way, right now we've got 3 scheduled, but we do, historically we've had 4 walk-ups. So let's book it as if there's going to be 7 appointments there.
Interesting. Yeah, that is a complex problem. So you have like a novel approach to it that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then where does Spiffy operate?
Yeah, so our headquarters is in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, also known as the Raleigh-Durham area. And then we're in 23 locations. I won't bore listeners with all of them, but we're coast to coast. So we are in LA, we're in San Diego. I think we're fleet only there right now. We're in Palm Springs, and then up north in San Francisco on your side. And then we're in Arizona, Las Vegas. We're big in Texas, Florida, and then up the Atlantic coast up to New York. And then we kind of stopped there. We haven't made it north of New York. And we're not in the Midwest in any concentrated way yet.
That's amazing. You're in a lot of important places.
Yeah, part of our goal is to be in, to expand services, and then expand ways we get to customers through, like, office parks and different lines of business, or channels per se, and then different geographies. Our goal is to be in the 50 largest cities in the United States, and we're just about halfway there.
That's amazing. All right, I'll wrap up with a few quick questions. One is, first of all, I do want to acknowledge you for spending time with us today and for your approach. I think it's very informative, and it gives us an insight of how someone thinks that is able to, start from scratch and then build a scalable venture. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Thanks. It's a lot of fun. So if you kind of nerd out on these metrics and that kind of thing, then it just kind of comes natural.
That's amazing. All right. So Jim Rohn says that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So who do you, Scott, spend the most time with?
So definitely my family. So that's kind of where I spend the bulk of my time. And then I do a podcast, as you mentioned, with a guy named Jason Goldberg, and he runs digital for a big ad agency named Publicis. So we spend a lot of time together. Yeah. And then I have, a couple. I'm more of a quality versus quantity. I've got like 3 or 4 friends I spend a fair amount of time with. Yeah.
That's amazing. How are you, Scott, changing the world?
So I try to build companies that help other companies. So ChannelAdvisor has 3,000 customers. I always mention the big named ones like the Nikes and the Macy's of the world because people recognize that. But there may be like 500 of the 3,000. The other 2,500 are kind of online entrepreneurs. So I love helping entrepreneurs build businesses. And at Spiffy, we just launched franchising. So we have this whole set of entrepreneurs that are going to try to take our ideas and innovate on them themselves and open them up in other markets markets. So, that definitely, supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem, it gets my juices going. And then here in the Raleigh-Durham area, I do a lot to mentor other startups, do a little bit of angel investing. And then one of the things that seems like it wouldn't have a big impact, I found that there's so many startups now that it's hard to kind of keep them sorted. So I keep a list here I call it the tweener list, which is companies between $1 million and 80 million. And that's been super helpful in the area to, for people moving to the area, looking for companies, investors, and then job hunters generally. So that's been a fun kind of passion project.
I love it. Well, I want to actually invite you on November 18th. There's something that I've started called Founders Pack, and it's I'm writing a second book, which is called Form Your Own Pack. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to help entrepreneurs in their startup journey to growth, but also to encourage them to look at a digital Keiretsu model where they form packs of cooperative ventures. And part of that is that we're holding our first pitch event. And I'm actually we're going to announce 3 judges shortly. This hopefully is an ongoing thing. So I'd like to invite you to be a judge in a future event. But also, if you have any startups that are interested in pitching, I would love to have you invite them to pitch for the event. It's a winner takes all event. It's online. And the idea is that startup founders, each of them have a $100 entry fee. And it's a winner takes all, where the winner gets a $500 Visa card from Check Spend. And we've got some pretty exciting judges we're going to announce shortly, including David Meltzer and Arabian Prince.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, that would be fun. Are you going to do Shark Tank style?
A little bit. I think what we're going to do, David actually, so he hosts a show for Entrepreneur Online called The Elevator Pitch. Mm-hmm. So we're going to basically, I think what we're doing is we're going to do a 1-minute pitch for each venture. And then someone had a good idea yesterday, which was make it a 2-rounder. So it's like everybody gets a 1-minute pitch. You can ask some quick questions from the judges, and then you pick the top 2, and then the top 2 decide the winner with a 3-minute pitch.
Got it.
So that's the game plan.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, so it'd be great to have you on a future event as a judge. And if you know any startups that might be a good fit, let us know.
Yeah, I'll definitely spectate and try to send any startups your way.
Terrific. Okay, the final thing is, when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate other interesting people to be a future guest of Automate and Grow. We usually talk to experts or entrepreneurs, person they serve and problems they solve, and if they have any tools or systems that got them there. So who would you, Scott, like to nominate as a future guest of Automate and Grow?
Yeah. So when ChannelAdvisor went public, I realized, that going public is fun. Running a public company is not my thing. So our CEO he was the COO and president at the time, is David Spitz, and he's he really likes the people side of automation, which is not my forte. So, variable compensation programs and making sure everyone's review is in on time. And so if you ever wanted to dig into the people side of an operation that scale, and just to put we have like 800 people plus at ChannelAdvisor. So, he's your guy for that. So I would recommend him on that side of the equation.
Terrific. So David Spitz, you've been nominated by Scott to be a future guest on Automate and Grow. We will accept that nomination. Scott, I appreciate your time today and all of your insight. It's been very valuable.
Thanks, Michael. And thanks everyone from listening and watching.
This has been another episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. We will see you on a future episode, hopefully with David Spitz. We will take that introduction. And this has been Automate and Grow.